every few days, I get in my car. I love my car, just like Esther. There's something about the safety and the speed, and I just love my car.
And the clear space, and the moving energy, and the being in a new space, new space, new space, new energy, new energy, new energy, and freedom, 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 freedom.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But I put myself in, I connect with my inner being and try to get in a high vibration, because I have to go visit my mother, who has dementia. Sorry, it's not as funny as, yeah. She's had dementia for about 11 years. It's getting progressively worse.
That's one way of staying in the now.
I just try to...
You can't remember it too much.
Well, she's... unfortunately,
meditation is a better choice.
Right. Unfortunately, it's not the kind of dementia that is affecting her memory. It's affecting her speech and her mobility. She's starting to lose her dignity, and I just try to give her positive energy.
You can't give anyone something that you are not seeing. So your description, accurate description of what's going on with her, is the vibration that you're offering. And it's asking a lot of someone to be experiencing that and offer a different vibration, but you can.
And I try, and sometimes guilt gets me, because when I leave her, she's in a good place. She's in a small home and taken care of with 5 other ladies. She's safe and she's fine. But when I leave, somehow I can just turn it off. I can just not give it my energy, and I can move on with my life and go live. And then, a few days later, when I'm called to go see her is when I go see her. I don't go because I have to. I don't go on a schedule.
And so you're darting in and darting out. And would you say, on balance, the majority of your thoughts are not being diminished by your awareness of that? You feel good, pretty good most of the time.
I do, until I have to talk to another family member or my father, or, somebody that's kind of not seeing it as well as I do, maybe.
And so what you're saying to us is that there are a lot of people in your experience that are seeing things in a way that doesn't serve them, and that when you engage with them, finish the sentence, when you engage with them, then what happens to you?
I try not to.
Do you think it's your job to turn their thoughts around? Is it your job to make them see it the way you're seeing it?
No, I try to change the subject.
And what does that accomplish?
They get irritated. Like, how do you not care about your mother type feeling.
So maybe that's not the best plan.
Okay.
There's a process that we've talked about through the years, and it is undervalued by most people, because most people don't really understand what it is about. It's called segment intending. And segment intending is your way of owning the moment. And by owning the moment, we mean it's you hooking up with your source and therefore being vibrationally dominant in any moment. Well, this is the big question that you want to ask yourself. Do I feel that I have the right, we're speaking for you, do I feel that I have the right to be vibrationally dominant and therefore happy when I'm with other people who are choosing not to be happy in that moment? Do you feel you have the right to do that?
I do.
So why don't you just do that?
Okay. How can I soothe her? Her latest thing is, I want to die. And she's literally tried to jump out of a car. And the doctor said she could have another 6 years. And how do I soothe her?
We've got to step back into a premise that is more stable first, because when you jump into a segment and you say, how do I soothe someone who is seemingly unsoothable? The answer to that is, you don't. So, got any other questions? Well, let me think. How do I soothe myself when I can't soothe someone else? By accepting that everybody is creating their own reality, and that feeling empathy for people in hard places doesn't help them. And you know how you know it? Because it feels so bad when you try to do it. So what are your options? Because most people put themselves in a place of having 2 choices. I can soothe myself by owning my vibrational space, by owning the room, by caring about how I feel, and by hooking up with my source energy, and by trying to see my mother through the eyes of source as best I can. Or I can do it the humaning way, where we all just get together and talk about things that hurt us when we talk about them, and then complain that no good ever comes from that. In other words, we don't see these as difficult choices, except that you've got to convince yourself that it's okay for you to be happy when there are others around you who are not. And you have to stop feeling responsible for the happiness of others over which you have no control. Now, you're really on the right track, because you said, I want to soothe my mother. Esther always listens attentively to the flight attendants because she respects them. And her favorite thing is when they explain that if the oxygen masks drop, Esther's never seen any of them. She wonders why there are 4 when there are only 3 seats, but she's never asked that question. Maybe someone sitting on someone's lap. But they always explain, put your mask on first before you help somebody else. And in airplanes, that seems logical to you. But in Abraham seminars, when we say, put your own well-being on first and then help others if you can, for some reason you want to say, no, I think I should suffer because they are. It's completely illogical with the laws of the universe, isn't it?
It is.
So do you think you can help your mother?
I don't know. No, I mean...
So we're just going to keep asking you some questions. Do you think you can help your mother? No, not really. Do you think that you can segment intend well enough that you can hold your own in any segment?
Yes.
Do you think that you can segment intend well enough that you could hold your own in a segment with your mother?
Yes, I do.
Do you think that you have the capacity to hook up to source energy, see your mother, even in her current condition, through the eyes of source, and feel appreciation for what you're seeing? Do you think your inner being can do that?
Yes.
Do you believe that if your inner being can do that, you can do that?
Yes.
Do you think your inner being has a different vantage point?
Yes.
What do you think your inner being's vantage point is that yours might not be? Just in general, what would the vantage point of your source energy or your inner being, what is the component of that vantage point that really stands out as being different and therefore huge advantage to non-physical? Broad view, broader view, whole view. The whole view. So your inner being knows who you are, knows who everyone else is, knows what's in the vortex, knows the whole of the person, knows all the value that has been lived and received, knows what the path of least resistance is. The reason your inner being doesn't freak out when you're freaking out is because your inner being has the big picture. So isn't that what you want to start practicing more segment by segment, is the big picture? So then ask yourself the question, once you have stepped into the big picture, which of the questions that you have asked here today can you imagine your inner being asking? If you'll ask yourself, what was the reason that I asked the question that I asked? Why am I asking what I'm asking? So when we put that back to you, why are you asking what you're asking about your mother? Trying to get yourself off the hook? Trying to get square with your other family members who don't know which end is up? Or are you trying to soothe your mother?
I'm just trying to soothe my mother. I'm trying to...
That's the answer you want us to believe.
Okay.
But that's not the vibrational footing that's there. Because what you're asking about is, you're talking about the other people. In other words, you feel sort of overwhelmed by all of this. And you know, it's all right that you're having a bumpy ride because of this, because that's what happens when you love people and people have experiences. We're not asking you to extract them from your experience and never think about them again. We're asking you to practice seeing them in present tense in the way that your and their inner being sees them in present tense. And so, is it wrong to withdraw from this physical experience? We're going to ask you questions, and you try to answer them, if you can, from the point of view that you think your inner being would be answering. So we're asking you to answer these questions as you think your inner being would be asking, or as your inner being would be approaching the subjects. When you get sick, have you done something wrong?
No.
Is sickness a punishment for bad living?
No.
Is having dementia a path of least resistance to moving into non-physical?
My inner being's answering? Yes. It doesn't feel like it sometimes.
So you have a conversation that you want to have with your inner being about that. Your inner being says that dementia is one of the paths of least resistance into non-physical. And so what do you want to say? Argue that point. If you don't believe that, give us your reason for that. You don't have a reason. You've just thought it for a while. But what's at the basis of what you've been thinking for a while?
Just that she's suffering.
But there's something else that we want to help you to understand. Is death a good thing or a bad thing?
Good thing.
Oh, you answered that really quickly. Because you're answering it from the point of view of your inner being, because there is no death.
Right.
Is there any death? No, there's no death. So if death is a good thing, and dementia is a path of least resistance on the way to that broader perspective, then what's the argument that you have with your inner being about any of this? Do you really have any argument?
I guess not, when I think of it like that.
What thoughts do you think you've been practicing that are in your way of letting this be a good thing, not a bad thing?
Just that the process is just so painful to watch, and it's painful for her. And it just seems, as far as like a path of least resistance, it just feels like so much resistance to get to that end point.
So when you see a child learning to walk, do you say, I can't look, it is so painful?
No.
Most people are up walking around, not that one. That may be one of the clumsiest people I have ever seen.
Right.
Or do you look at the big picture?
Big picture?
So could you take another look? Is it painful to watch somebody on their path of least resistance? Here's what happens. Humans get all tangled up in stuff about whether they should die, whether they shouldn't die, whether they can prevent themselves from dying. They get all wadded up in all of this, and that's why they have experiences that are of great resistance, because the path of least resistance is just to make their transition easily. But humans don't usually make their transitions easily because they're not yet allowing themselves to feel the freedom to die. I'm not done with this life. I haven't been good enough. I'm not worthy enough to die yet. I haven't done what I was supposed to do. In other words, you've got all these bogus things that are in your way, and so you make a struggle out of things that you don't need to make a struggle out of. You know what the cat does when it has enough? It runs into the street. And you say, oh, that was so hard to watch. And the cat says, I'm out of here. You think we're kidding. We're not kidding at all. So we're going to ask you some inner being questions again. Is death a bad thing or a good thing?
It's a good thing.
So you want to say, okay, I'll go along. It's a good thing. I'm just not ready yet. So let's get into this. Why would anyone not be ready to continue to have ongoing life? What is it that you've done in your way of approaching life that makes you want to hear us when we say you're eternal, and want to hear us when we say that you will remain focused and you will still have a perspective and that you don't go anywhere and that there's no ending to who you are? You want to hear all of that, but what thoughts do you practice on a pretty regular basis that make that a struggle for you to know that? Your inner being goes with the flow. And you know what the flow is? The flow is you having lived life and you putting things in your vortex, and you have established what your flow is, and your inner being is all over that. So when you go with your flow, you're going to feel great. So if you feel like going to see your mother, go to see her. And if it feels good, then stick around for a little while. But when it doesn't feel good, don't stay. And don't talk to other people about it. And don't try to make it more than it is. And don't try to save the world. And don't try to save your mother. And don't try to be the hero of anything. Just go see your mother if you feel like going and seeing your mother. And don't you wish that we could all just stop talking about all of this? Don't you wish that you could just listen to what John Lennon says, which is all you need is love. Love is all you need. All you need. That's all there is. That's what your inner being feels about all of this. So when you see your mother, there's plenty to love. Make a decision that you're going to choose something that feels good, and then practice it in all the times that you're not in a situation that's harder, which will make it easier to practice it when you are in a situation where it is harder. But most of all, if there is anything that we want you to hear, if there's anything that this segment is of value for you and for anybody else that could ever hear it, if the value that we have offered as we put this energy into the universe is this. Ready for it? You get to choose how you feel, no matter what.